Hi, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Rick Parkhill. I'm the Director of Brand Storytelling, and I'm really pleased to be joined by this panel today to talk about brand purpose and empathy in the new normal of brand storytelling. Um, we have Kim Miller here, who's the newly appointed CMO of Toys R Us, and another congratulations in order for that. Kim's going to be leading the conversation today. I'm going to turn it over to her in just a moment. Um, we have Victoria. I always screw up your last name, Victoria. Victoria I got to say it right.
La Villa.
Laville.
Yes.
I got to work on my pronunciations there. She's the VP of Video Production Development at Morgan Stanley. We have Tom Wall here, who's the Manager of Content Development at Walgreens Boots Alliance. I got to include Boots Alliance, right?
Got to include Boots Alliance. And for the longest time, I thought Alliance was the noun that meant Walgreens and Boots were allied, but it's a third company.
Yeah. How many people know that Boots Alliance is attached to the Walgreens company? And so I thought it was a whole different thing.
No, I think you find out during onboarding.
Andrew Strickman, most recently from Realtor.com. He's a 2020 honoree, brand storytelling honoree, nominated by his brand storytelling peers. Currently, we'll call you currently a free agent, unless you have an announcement to make for us.
No announcements. Deep in a job search, but also spending time with family, as well as doing some consulting on the side and advising some nonprofits.
Great. Well, we're going to stay tuned for that next chapter in your life.
Me too.
I'm sure it'll be exciting and rewarding. We have Kwame Taylor Hayford here. Kwame is is a co-founder of Kin. It's an agency who's doing a lot of great work. I know I've been following the stuff you've been doing with MailChimp. That's really terrific. So Kwame, thanks for being here today. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. It's really nice to meet everyone and excited to chat.
Great. And we have Bob Cagliaro here from Bodega Studios. Bob, I think lending your perspective today about what your clients are telling you and what kind of stories they want to weave is going to be really important perspective. So thanks for coming on board.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And, timing is always, an important attribute, and one that George Hammer embraces. And he's just joined us right now. George Hammer, head of content for IBM. Hi, George. I just made all the intros. I'm going to hand it back over to Kim Miller now and let you dive into this conversation. Kim, take it away.
Hey, everybody. Great to see all of you. I have a long, robust history in content, most recently with Marquee Brands, where I did a lot of brand storytelling and TV production, digital production, event production for Martha Stewart, specifically created a Martha and Snoop's potluck dinner party, and also Martha Knows Best during COVID, where I learned too well the production behind the mask, shooting a TV show with 3 iPhones and a team of 8 on a 110-degree farm with Martha Stewart is an experience in itself. And she was awesome. The rest of us almost died of heat stroke, but it's now in its 3rd season and on Discovery Plus and very successful. And now I have recently been lucky enough to get a job as CMO of Toys R Us, and also president of Toys R Us Studios, which we're going to learn what is, as I learn what it is, but having a lot of partnership conversations. Toys R Us is currently there's 900 stores globally in 25 countries. Most people don't realize that. And over a $2 billion business. And we are have a lot of big plans for the future. So that being said, Rick and I spoke a while ago about the new normal. Mackenzie had termed it that, and I really liked that because it's always what's next in our world. And with COVID, storytelling and connecting with our consumers really became a very authentic, approachable, equalizing experience where we were all connecting with each other from our homes, whether we were mega stars like Lady Gaga or, just us people that go to work every day in the same squares. So there was a lot that had happened, a lot of adaptability in the type of production we do, how we do production, events virtually versus being live. And today we're talking about what is going to happen now that we're transitioning in the brand connecting and storytelling itself. We've, gone through a lot of empathy, a lot of social change and awareness, and a lot of real eye-opening to how we really approach diversity and how we really connect with each other. And now we're entering a new phase. And I'm left to wonder, are we going to now take that with us, or as we kind of get back to where we were with the world opening up, are we going to move into the directions we were going in before all this happened? So let's start with Andrew. Do you want to start with what your opinion is, and we'll take it from there?
Yeah, thank you for that introduction, Kim, and great to be on this panel. I think there's a couple of points you raised. One is, are people going to take the empathy that they have connected with individually, as well as with their teams and with their brands and with their customers, with them into sort of the next phase of what marketing means? And I think that the answer needs to be yes. I can't necessarily claim to know what everybody is going to do and how everybody's going to act, but I do hope that the shared experience that we all went through, both the pandemic and locking down our lives, but also a lot of the social and moral issues that came up related to a lot of things that were going on around the world, and particularly in the United States at the same time, I think really puts a fine point on people's needs to be more understanding of themselves, of the people around them, and of the people that they work with. And I hope that it's going to lead to a lot more sort of focus on empathetic leadership and how that carries forward even in marketing. The other thing I just wanted to raise is that I think people are going through a bit of compassion fatigue or empathy fatigue at the moment. And I think, to one of the points that was raised, I think in Rick's initial notes for the conversation, I think brands do have permission to stop focusing everything on what the last year has looked like, and instead focus on what the future looks like. And I hope that the content that brands create, either as traditional advertising or in sort of more long form formats, is going to allow for more of that entertainment and inspiration and information and education that I think branded content really built its foundation off of. So I'm excited for the future, and I hope that everyone else is too.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we need to look at, since we've gone in this direction. How much is going to be authentic, and how much is going to be where we feel like we need to continue on that just because now it's expected? Does anybody want to speak to that? Meg, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll hop in on that one. So I think what I find really intriguing is, even before COVID, the pandemic and the lockdown, the data was telling us that audiences were getting really tired of being hit over the head with fry pans in terms of the messaging and the consumerism. And even before all of this happened, we were starting to see that shift towards how can brands and companies and organizations tell the story in a different way that doesn't feel like it's such a literal sales ask towards the consumer. And I think with that, plus everything that we've been through the last 2 years, I think it would be a miss if the light switch turned back off, and we suddenly went back into that system of creating the traditional 30, 60, 90 with a super hard sales message at the end of it. I don't think audiences want it. It's not what they will pay attention to. It's not what will live in their long-term cognition. So if you want brand recognition for any length of time, those kind of salesy messages, I think, are going to be the wrong way to do that. To the point about empathy and authenticity, I think, Andrew said something really interesting about, giving brands permission to sort of subtly step away from the heavy degrees of empathy related to the pandemic. But what I don't think they should step away from is the true, authentic human experience that I think we are all craving as a result of this. That can be through entertainment, that can be through real human stories, that can be through philanthropy and initiatives. But I think it would be a miss to not lean into those sorts of stories on the back end of what everybody's experienced.
Tom, I see you shaking your head. Yes. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's being at Walgreens. It's a really kind of interesting problem that we now face, to be honest, because I started at Walgreens in November of 2019. So I had about 2 months of the normal job, and then basically the whole rest of the time has been the COVID job. So we had that 30-60, we had a 30-60-90. We actually had a pretty good intentional split between, it's not our tagline anymore, but it was, happy and healthy. And so it's always been an empathetic brand, but it's always been a brand that says we're looking out for your healthcare, but an even split with the retail side. And so COVID hits, and not only do we have to pivot from a business sense like every other brand did towards, we want to make sure you're happy, we want to make sure you're safe, we want to be empathetic in that way. But literally our business was getting people tested, getting PPE sold, making sure, at the very beginning, making sure things like hand sanitizer and toilet paper were in stock. And even up till now, it was early in the year, it was mass vac centers, getting the vaccines out there, getting vaccine messaging out there from our health experts. And now it's really our sole focus is on one hand, tackling vaccine hesitancy and reticence, and starting to talk about things like, I hate to say it because he came across my desk, but talking about things like booster shots and talking about things like, what do we have to do next? So for the Walgreens world, it's really not going away, and it probably won't be going away for the next year, business wise. Messaging wise, it's a really interesting puzzle that it's left us with, because we've kind of stumbled through luck or whatever into these really high SEO content pieces just based on the fact that people are searching Walgreens COVID vaccine. And any article or video or piece of content that my team puts out that has those words in the headline, we can guarantee a certain amount of organic engagement just based on that alone. And so what we've been starting to tackle is, okay, what's next for us? How do we go forward? How do we take lessons learned from this? Not just treat it as, okay, well, we got lucky with the SEO for that. So, let's just write that off. That's a one-off. But let's actually learn those SEO lessons for the rest of our content. And maybe there can be a lesson there that relates to the beauty sector. There's a content piece that's in the works right now of, lipstick sales are really going through the roof now, because now that mask mandates have been lifted in most places, all of a sudden you have to worry about what your face looks like from here down. So the two big items that we've had selling are lipstick and teeth whitening. So it's these interesting insights you don't really think of. And then of course, there's little things you don't think of at Walgreens, like the travel section, travel sized toiletry items, and even things like travel bags, stuff like that just, we couldn't count on selling for the last year. And now all of a sudden that stuff is in huge high demand. So we're kind of just like solving that puzzle, but it's really interesting because where my team sits, we literally straddle both the pharmacy healthcare side and the retail side. And we're trying to help the problems from one solve the other and the lessons learned from one solve the other. So it's a really unique kind of puzzle we find ourselves in, but it's also what I always try to hammer home with our teams is, to your point, Megan, we're never going to let that light switch turn off of empathy, because that's always kind of been baked into what we do. And we've built up a lot of credibility as, not just a voice of authority in the healthcare world, but an empathetic voice of authority. The pharmacists are here for you. We're here to tell you why we know the vaccine is safe and why people that you know and trust have taken it. And here's what they have to say about it. So that's really where we've had to spend a lot of our kind of brand equity in terms of our credibility is getting people to take these vaccines and know that you can trust us. We're your corner store. We're here for you.
Mhm.
We've always been here for you. And that's not gonna change because of this.
That's a great point. You really kind of stepped right into the sweet spot, unfortunately and fortunately. So I totally understand that. Kwame, I see you shaking your head. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking I agree with a lot of what's been shared. Megan said something earlier that's kind of struck me a little bit on, I think the reality that we're not just competing as, brand owners or leaders with other brands for consumers' attention has never been more true. I think if you don't go out there and try to be more compelling than Dogface drinking a, ocean spray skateboarding in LA or anything that's showing up on Netflix or Disney Plus, then you've got a problem, and I think it starts with you understanding your purpose and who you are, as a brand and how you want to show up in the world, but it's also going to be reinforced a lot by the actions that you take. I think I agree COVID fatigue, but I'm a big believer that we're never going back. It's the new abnormal moving forward.
Right.
And embracing that and understanding like your role in driving specific narratives around your core values and your beliefs and aligning those to the good that's needed in the world today. The world's got a lot of problems and governments are having a really challenging time getting things done, and organizations and individuals often don't have the resources of the scale. So I think this idea of conscious, capitalism and brands really leaning in, and it doesn't mean you have to be, somber and serious all the time. You can tell these stories with some sort of joy and levity, and but I do think it's important that brands own some of the responsibility of shifting a few things in the culture, in the work that we do. And we launched a recent project with Procter & Gamble, where we partnered with Tribeca Studios and we reimagined, the horrific 8 minutes and 46 seconds that we all lived last year through that film of George Floyd into something that is joyful and meaningful and optimistic, and we reimagined and reclaimed that time with stories of love. And those were, 4 short films, all 8 minutes and 46 seconds long. And we debuted at Tribeca, and we're currently negotiating to put them on some streaming platforms and get them out to the world. Like, I think that's the turn that we need. We need to get away from the narratives about the pain and the struggle and move into what can be a more positive and affirming future.
That's amazing. I can't wait to see them for sure. I think one of the things everybody's also leaning in on is really being consumer centric, really looking at what the conversation is now totally connected. It's circular. We're listening and we're responding. And I love the fact that there's much more of a conversation and an understanding of what the consumer wants. And I think the consumer has been really great at sharing what they want and what they need. And maybe that's part of why so much has percolated up to the top this year, which has been so powerful. Victoria, what do you think of all that? Unmute.
Thank you. I'm listening to everybody and thinking about what we've been doing. We're a very large investment bank, and we've always stayed under the radar. We don't, our most recent campaign has focused on our people. We're people centric. We're in a relationship business. And a lot of what we do is future thinking. What's come to the surface for us as far as content messaging has really been a lot recently around our research. Because the markets, because there's so much uncertainty, that's where we come into play as a trusted voice. Our analysts, all of our senior leadership, they're the folks that have kind of been at the forefront a lot of our communications. So we're not as, we're a little bit more shy, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. But a lot of what we're trying to do is look ahead and try to bring messaging to our investors and our clients that help them understand that the future is bright, that there is a lot that's going to come from this time, and what those changes will be. So it's just providing some certainty around a lot of uncertain things.
Well, I think from your brand and what you provide, that's what your consumer needs from you.
Mm-hmm.
Where, you know, providing that image of love that Kwame was talking about is what, you know, it was important for the consumers he was reaching out to. We haven't heard yet from Bob. Unmute.
It's funny, after Victoria just did that, I was putting my cursor on the mute button. I didn't do it. Thank you, Kim. Well, you know, it's interesting. We've been, prior to the pandemic, we were always quite involved in a lot of CSR work, a lot of for good social, and the owners of our company have been involved in an organization called Trickle Up for over a decade now. And so I think that what we saw is that the amount of CSR and good stories that were honest and genuine coming from a lot of the corporate brand, you know, headquarters were more of, you know, like Kwame mentioned something earlier with P&G. P&G donated so much product in tough times. And I think that what happened prior to the pandemic was there was certainly a lot more awareness to corporate social responsibility, doing good, inclusivity, diversity. But I think that the past, you know, year and a half of being kind of a little bit in a cave led us to all be a little more introspective. And I also think it led the consumers to really kind of see what was honest and what wasn't. And I think that what's coming on with the new normal, if you will, is that I think that has kind of really been baked into our brains as a consumer. I think that now more than ever, the companies that are doing well are the companies that people believe in, the actual brand culture and the brand fabric. So I think that's here to stay. Currently, we're not seeing a lot of work that is sensitive to the pandemic or anything like that, but we are seeing a lot of work that signifies, like what Tom was saying, lipstick and I don't know what the other product was, but people are going out. You know, I think there's I think there's a huge increase in out of home right now advertising. So a lot of the work that we see, people want to see how we would transpose it to an out-of-home application, or you know, and to Kwame's point, getting something that's down in a real viral kind of social way is really kind of become a way that we are able to see what a company, you know, can build their culture or build their corporate responsibility messages based on what the consumer's saying. It's kind of like a homegrown, grown from the viral and the social worlds north. And so that's kind of my perspective on it.
Very, very interesting. George, we haven't heard from you yet.
Hello. Yeah, I'm just sitting on the porch, rocking away, listening. This is a good conversation. I'm running from my kids as they follow me to every room I go to. It's like I don't understand. I go to the kitchen, they come there, I go, it's ridiculous. I'm a big child magnet. So yeah, I think we're lucky that the economy is doing well. And so brands are getting the opportunity to experiment and take, and what was seen as a risk with this level of brand purpose content that we're doing. I'm really concerned the moment the economy turns that we're gonna go back, because until we find a better way to measure good with good revenue, and I don't know about you guys, we're not there yet in that measurement connection. We know it works for us as a brand. We think we know because of the Smarter Planet era, we were growing. Now we're doing this stuff, we're growing. But in the end, most companies, marketing contributes to somewhere between 5 and 30% of the sales, right? When you do market mix modeling. So it could be, yeah. So I think we're in the community that's here needs to figure out how to do our great work, prove it works, and then hold the line the moment the economy turns. That's going to be the difference on whether we're good for real or just good in times of good. And that's what I'm concerned about.
I think
I'll-
that's, go on, sorry.
No, I just have a thought about what George said, because I think it's a really interesting, conversation. And to me, that's a little bit of the distinction between marketing and brand building, and I think, the time horizon and the way that you create correlations between what marketing and brand building can deliver and how that impacts to sales is a discussion we had a lot. Before starting Kin, I was at Chobani and helped kind of build and lead and grow that in-house creative discipline. And there was a lot of discussion about what that capability was going to contribute to the business. And I would argue being able to be deliberate and thoughtful about how we built that brand is what has allowed and empowered a lot of business success, and given the company permission to get outside of just making yogurt and into beverages and into non dairy products and a bunch of other stuff that hasn't launched yet that is going to be amazing. So aligning on metrics and KPIs and frameworks for how you kind of capture and socialize that is a huge part of the job that, as marketers, I suppose we need to do to prove our value. And it's, marketing is not just a drag on the P&L, or brand building is not just a drag on the P&L. It can absolutely be a force multiplier if it's considered in the right context.
It's just always hard to measure that conversion. And, in time of crisis, to George's point, the companies kind of, I think a lot of the C-suite might have put that aside in, an effort to all connect, as humans. But you're right. What happens when all of a sudden everybody's looking at the P&L and it's not doing as well? Will we be able to do as Kwame said, or are we going to all be pushed to, show that conversion? And then how do we react to all this?
I think that's one of the big differences in my mind, though, with what's happening with consumers. I think previously a brand could put a point of view out there about itself that didn't necessarily align to the reality of what the company was doing and what the business was doing. But I think that world is gone, with social media and with the access that people have to information. There's so much transparency. If you're not walking the talk, you're done. You're done, especially if you're talking to a millennial or a Gen Z consumer. So I don't disagree with you. I think, a lot of C-suite leaders, the commercial sort of requirements are often, really intense and can take precedent. But I think it's a bit short-sighted to see them as separate from the, values and the purpose and the brand. They're very much intertwined. And I think being a force for good and a force for growth is being proven over and over again as a very sustainable way to operate.
Well, and that's what Bob was saying, because when Bob was saying about the fact that a company actually giving product in a time of crisis and what that does to that relationship, because it's real, is what we need to be looking at. Because you're right, that authenticity, it's very, very easy to call bullshit because everybody has too much information at their fingertips. Bob, do you want to add to that?
I also think there's, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, it's funny you brought that up, Kwame, about KPIs and all that with the CSR type of work. We are getting asked more and more for brands that are trying to really make sure they're going to go into this properly. Do you have some KPIs on that social good campaign you did? And it's very difficult for us, especially on the production company side, to get those metrics. But what we're seeing is the request for companies that now more than ever, as they dip their toe into that type of expenditure or corporate message, they want to still see that it makes a dent for them. So that's a really good point about it having having to have some impact and walking the walk as well.
I was going to add, I do think that there is at least one beneficial byproduct of everything that happened over the last year and a half, which is that I think companies are really listening to their employees more, and employees were driving an awful lot of definition of purpose within a company, as well as the need to be better people throughout both the pandemic and a lot of the social uprising around George Floyd's murder and other topics like that. And I think that kind of introspective thinking, especially when it bubbled up from the employee base itself, led at least some corporate leadership to really rethink how the company was presenting itself to the outside world. And I think that there was a lot of lip service paid, but also a lot of really great success in recrafting company culture in a way that was expressible to the outside world.
I will jump in really quick too, and I think part of it is reflective of the media landscape too, because if you look at, like, I don't know, maybe the last 10 to 15 years of pop culture, certainly on TV and in movies, you know, the anti-hero and the bad guy and bad stuff, like that was all really popular for a while. And then we hit this period of crisis for a couple of years where everybody was feeling bad and they just wanted to start feeling good. And then you have things like, you know, Ted Lasso, which is just a, you know, show that's just unabashedly positive, and things like that start doing well. And I feel like it's cool to be good and positive again, right? Where it really wasn't for large parts of the last decade, where kind of the cool thing and the big media thing was, you know, anti-hero and, you know, Breaking Bad and stuff like that. But I feel like now we're getting into this really empathetic kind of place in media and pop culture. And I think that definitely bleeds through to brands. And if brands aren't acting accordingly, you know, you're kind of falling behind, because we're getting away from kind of like snarky, maybe, you know, being snarky at the consumer and being kind of like, you know, we're in on the joke, we're self-deprecating, but we're also deprecating towards you. And now it's like, no, we all just want to give you a big hug, because these last 2 years have been awful for everybody. So there's not really an appetite or a space anymore for that sort of snark. It's more just like, we want some authenticity, we want some feel good, we want to feel good about ourselves. And so I've just been seeing that kind of developing in the media landscape. And I think it's certainly carried over to obviously brand storytelling from that as well.
And how do companies that don't have products as directly linked to that as you do? What are some suggestions you guys have from your expertise in connecting the two, connecting the empathy and the message, if you aren't selling something that you can either give away like P&G, or, you know, value that you can add that's so directly to people's current health concerns? Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, I can speak to what's worked for us, and I think that might be what works for products and brands that don't directly connect in that logical way, and that's just being very authentic in and of yourself, and not lying to the consumer, because the consumer can smell BS from a mile away, and now more so than ever. I think the point was made earlier, and so we really just kind of leaned into who we are and what we do in a very, very big way, and not trying to make any bones about it, not trying to, you know, do any sort of spin, not trying to do any sort of misrepresentation, just saying, you know, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is the value we bring. And I truly believe that if you're a company and a brand out there that has achieved some level of success, it's not because you don't bring value to the world, you know? So you just have to tap into what that authentic, true value is and go from there. You know, like I can look at everybody on here and probably point to what the true authentic value is that you and your brand bring to the world. And I think it's tapping into that and making that inform your storytelling. You know, if it's toys are extremely important. Toys are, you're talking about George needs something to distract his kids. So, you know, where's he going to go for that? And, you know, wealth management is extremely important now more than ever. And the, you know, the brands of P&G, like, everything has its own inherent value. And I think where brands get into trouble is when they start to kind of leave their lane, so to speak, and say, you know, oh, well, we're a snack chip, but we super care about, you know, let's say sustainability. Like I'll just be really honest. That's a problem that we struggle with Walgreens, is trying to tap into things like Plastic Free July or trying to cut down on plastics. And there's a lot of things that we do to be sustainable, but one of the things that we're just not there yet is in terms of like plastic reduction, because we're a pharmacy. Like most of what we need to deliver to the consumer for their health and for their what they can afford and everything they need, there's a fair amount of plastic involved in that. So we can't lie about that. We can't misrepresent ourselves and say that we've always been at the forefront of plastic reduction. And so I guess kind of the long, like meandering point I get to with that is every brand kind of has that true and authentic thing within their own actual business. And that's what kind of needs to come out, because it has to be an authentic thing. It can't be something that you don't know. It can't be something that you just decided over the summer, we're going to become a big social justice company over the summer. And you have to build up authenticity. You have to build up credibility to be able to tap into all those things.
You need at least summer and fall to make that transformation, by the way.
Exactly.
I was just going to say, I think a really good time to build a relationship is when you don't need anything. So to your point, Karen, like we've all lived through this experience. It's been an amazing equalizer, right? It didn't matter if you were in Wuhan or Brooklyn, you were quarantined at home just like everybody else. So in a way, there's a universal truth that we can tap into to tell stories and to connect. And I think the point about knowing yourself and knowing how you want to show up is key. And then, I don't know, like be interesting, like tell me something I don't know. Like inspire me, challenge a perception that I have. I just think, we have permission, I think, as brands to really lean into helping consumers just see their world a little bit differently, and I think when we do that, we're really memorable, and I think you open the door to a conversation or a relationship that you can then build from.
I'll hop in for a second, if you don't mind, Kim. So I don't think Rick introduced me, which is totally fine, but I just wanted to say, like, I'm a director. So I work on the side, obviously in the execution side of things. And one of my favorite parts of the job, and this works with some clients and brands and it doesn't work with others. And that's my truth and my path to walk. But the challenge that I like to bring to the table when I'm looking at boards or I'm looking at a concept is, to Kwame's point, how do you humanize something that could be very non-human in a way? How do you interweave those universal truths into the story that you're trying to tell? And I'll compare and contrast two things. P&G has been brought up quite a bit in this conversation, and I directed a spot for P&G during pandemic that was, ultimately it was trying to sell a product, as they do, but it was about community and engagement and somebody who was really trying to be the voice of trust and connectivity with their particular community, and how those bonds were built. And the product, obviously you knew at the end of it what was trying to be sold, but it was more about the journey and the humans and the pieces along the way that made you as a viewer then go, oh yeah, when I'm searching for fill in the blank, I'm going to reach for that one because I can see myself there. I can understand what, that experience has been. I'll contrast that with some pharma boards that came across that were ultimately a pass, because it was a product where the brand wanted to pull in celebrity and keep, the image was all about the celebrity and the sales and the shine and the inauthenticity to it. And I said, I'd be interested in doing this if we can take the celebrity out of the celebrity and talk about the fact that that person is a human that is having very real experiences that can be impacted by the product. But if you flip it and go the other way around, it's the same noise that we've all been seeing. It's the same, smoke and mirrors that none of us are craving anymore anyway. So I think it's there's two very different paths to those experiences. But I think, the brands that are searching for those human connections, they are searching for the empathy, they're searching for the truths, that can be via entertainment and it can be via sales, but I think those are the stories that are going to land and stick and stay and grow.
Totally agree. Any other thoughts on that?
No,
I'm
I think that's just such a good point. And just a good thing for all of us to remember too, because a lot of times we get lost in trying to create the message, warp the message, sell the message, and sometimes you just have to go back and remember like what it is in the first place you're trying to do and trying to accomplish and trying to put out there.
Well, and I think that's one of the things many of us have did during COVID is help people find solutions, which was different than the message. So, this before, I got to Toys R Us, some of the content that, that the content people were creating that I loved was unique ways to use the toys. So, your home, how to make a pool noodle into a racetrack. They would show the Hot Wheels cars, but it was nothing about Hot Wheels. It was showing ways that parents could interact and kind of the power of play in keeping everybody, stimulated and having fun. And there are, quite a few examples of that I just thought was so great for parents to, the blasters that you use solo cups on string and do races on who could win and get the solo cup. All those type of things I just thought were solutions, because again, we were looking at what the need was as opposed to what our message was that we had to get across. And yet still you got across what a Toys R Us kid is. You got across the power of play. You got across the parent and child relationship and interacting together. So I think that's one of the lessons is we have to keep remembering what the consumer wants and building our message into that in a way that serves them.
Kim, I'm going to jump in here. We're bumping right up against our 45 minutes, and this has been a great conversation, and appreciate everybody's input here. So many great themes coming out of today's conversation. I heard Kwame call this is the new abnormal, not the new normal. I love that. And together maybe we create a new abnormal that's really going to help society and people everywhere. I'm reminded about, thinking about brands and purpose and, and thinking about what P&G has done over the past several years to really realign themselves with consumers and take ownership for the mistakes that they've made in the past. Think about the film they did, Words Matter, where they really took ownership for being discriminatory in the past. And, that took a lot of courage for P&G to do that. I think brands everywhere need to, look in the mirror and ask themselves, do we have a purpose? And have we ever had one? And if we haven't, why not? And, and to Andrew's point is this, like, let's look to our employees to tell us where we should be headed, because they're our culture. Not only our customers, but the people that come to work for us every day. What do they want from us? What's it going to take for them to feel good about the direction this company's taken? Hey everybody, this has been just a terrific conversation. We can do this again whenever you like. Just let me know. I think there's some things we didn't hit on, Kim, that are worthy of another gathering. And I think it's about, will brand storytelling take center stage in the future as, the 30, 60-second spots, become less and less effective and consumers are flocking to streaming platforms. You got to be what they're searching for and not interrupt what they've found. So what does that mean to all of you? And what does that mean? How do we convince the C-suite, to George's point, how do you measure this and show that doing good is indeed good for business? So let's all get back together and have that conversation. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all for participating.
Thank you, Rick.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Kim. Bye-bye, everyone.
Everybody.